haven't changed my attitude towards the game since I've been playing. I always enjoy my football and I always see the funny side of the situation.
For John Charles, the great Welsh player, and Bobby Moore.
Marsh was calling for it, and a slip there allows Marsh to go in! A goal by Marsh! What a goal!
Before the headlines, before the flair, before the controversies, Rodney Marsh was just a boy with a ball, a cracked pavement, a dream nobody believed in. They told him he'd never make it. Too loose, too wild, too different from what England was building. But he didn't care about their idea of football. He played with his socks rolled down, with arrogance they mistook for rebellion, and genius they never wanted to coach. Rodney didn't chase stats, he chased moments. The ones that made football feel alive. A backheel that humiliated a defender, a pass only the brave would try. He loved the game before it got scared of freedom. Before tactics strangled joy, before brands replaced soul. And through it all, there were names, players he never forgot. Not because they were perfect, but because they reminded him of the truth. They played with madness, elegance, violence, or vision. But always with soul, and that's all he ever respected. Subscribe. If you still believe football should be beautiful, even when it isn't safe. If there was ever a player who reflected Rodney Marsh's own fire and flair, it was Stan Bowles. They didn't just look alike on the pitch, they saw the game the same way. Both had that lazy grace that fooled defenders. Both had the arrogance of men who knew what they could do, and didn't need your permission to do it. Rodney once said Stan should have had 100 caps, but England never liked players like them, too unpredictable, too honest. Rodney didn't just admire Bowles, he defended him. When the press mocked Stan's lifestyle, Rodney saw the courage behind it, the refusal to be tamed, the genius behind the chaos. And Stan in turn saw Rodney as a brother in exile. Two kings without crowns, two artists who kept painting long after the gallery closed. There were matches where Bowles made defenders look like statues, passes no one else saw, goals from angles that defied geometry. But what stayed with Rodney wasn't just the brilliance, it was the attitude. Stan didn't ask to be understood, he asked for the ball. And for Rodney Marsh, that was enough to make him unforgettable. They called it a roadshow, but to Rodney, it was something else. Two men who didn't belong, finally belonging to each other. George Best didn't need a spotlight. He was the spotlight. And Rodney didn't need to compete. He just stood beside it, laughing at the madness. From Manchester's headlines to Fulham's forgotten terraces, they toured England like two exiles who'd made peace with their sins. One dribbled through defenders, the other danced through conversations. And together, they made even Tuesday nights feel like theatre. Rodney never said George was the greatest. He didn't need to. Because greatness doesn't need a certificate. It needs a witness, and Rodney was there for all of it. He watched the chaos. He heard the pain between the jokes. He saw what the papers missed. A man brilliant enough to burn everyone, including himself. At Fulham, they were more than teammates. They were fragments of the same rebellion. Best was the storm. Marsh was the fire. And Bobby Moore, quiet in the middle, was the calm that held them together. No tactics, no pressure. Just football like it was meant to be, free, fearless, and completely unrepeatable. Rodney never forgot that, because when George played, the game itself remembered how to feel alive. Rodney never liked runners. He called them track athletes with football boots. Too clean, too robotic, too eager to please the coach. But Colin Bell was different. He glided through games like a man who didn't even hear the whistle. Pure football, without the theatre. Rodney watched him in silence, not with envy, with something rarer, admiration. Lovely footballer was Colin Bell. That's all he said. No metaphors, no ego. And coming from Marsh, that was a love letter. They played together at City, and Rodney, for once, wasn't the centre of the storm. He arrived in '72 when City were flying. And he cost them the title. His words, not anyone else's. I cost them the title. Bell never blamed him, never shouted, never needed to. He just kept playing the game right. That haunted Rodney. Because for all his fire, for all his vision, he knew he'd let down the one player who never asked for anything except a little dignity in return. Bell wasn't just a footballer, he was Rodney's mirror of what discipline could look like. If it had soul. Not many earned his respect. Colin Bell did without trying. Rodney burned through managers. He didn't believe in authority. He questioned everything, especially the loud ones. But Bobby Moore never had to raise his voice. Rodney followed him without asking why. No armband theatrics, no dressing room speeches. Moore led like a ghost, present in every decision, invisible when the game needed to breathe. At Fulham, Marsh found something rare. Calm. It wasn't the tactics, it wasn't the wages. It was Moore. Just being there. They shared a pitch, a dressing room, and something deeper. A refusal to bend to the system. But for once, Rodney didn't feel like the outcast. Moore made rebellion feel safe. Back in the England days, it was different. Marsh knew Ramsey didn't trust him. Too much flair. Too many jokes. Then came the moment. Ramsey tried to sub him on with a warning, and Rodney bit back. He was never called up again. But he never blamed Bobby. He couldn't. In a world that worshipped medals, Moore stayed human. That mattered more to Rodney than any World Cup. Years later, when Marsh talked about leadership, he never mentioned boards, badges, or managers. He just said one name, and everyone listening knew. Rodney admired rebels, but he worshipped giants. Only one made his all-time scans twice, as centre-back and centre-forward. John Charles, the gentle giant. Power without ego. Violence without malice. The kind of footballer Rodney believed no longer existed. He'd never seen anyone dominate a match in two directions. Backwards and forwards. Clean. Honest. Irresistible. Rodney didn't speak about many men like that. But Charles wasn't many men. No red cards. No scandals. Just respect earned across two nations, Wales and Italy, where Juventus fans still speak his name like scripture. To Marsh, Charles was proof that strength didn't need cruelty, and dominance didn't need noise. He saw in him everything missing from the modern game: humility, grace, thunder wrapped in velvet. Charles was the player that reminded Rodney what football used to feel like, before agents, headlines, and betrayal. So when asked to pick a dream team, Rodney never blinked. He picked Charles twice. Because men like that don't come around once. Rodney didn't just play football, he fought for a version of it that was vanishing. One where joy still mattered. Where flair was more than just tolerated, it was sacred. But that fight cost him. He challenged managers, mocked systems, spoke his mind. Called Pelé the Black Rodney Marsh. And watched the media explode. He got sacked by Sky for going one line too far. TalkSport gave him a mic, then took it back. England never forgave him for biting back at Ramsey. One cap too many, and one answer too honest. He never played safe. Never apologised to fit in. Never sacrificed the artist for the algorithm. And that's why it hurt. Because Rodney knew what he was giving up. He could have played it straight. Could have charmed the pundits. Kissed the badge. Smiled for the headlines. But instead, he told the truth. And the truth wasn't welcome. So they clipped his wings, mocked the fire, and called it ego. But Rodney knew. It wasn't ego. It was love. Love for a game that no longer loved him back. Rodney Marsh never chased medals. He chased the moment. The pass nobody saw. The goal from nowhere. The silence after a dribble that stunned the crowd. That was his measurement of greatness. Across his wild, untamed career, he played 505 league games and scored 218 goals. An extraordinary return for a player who danced on instinct, not systems. 9 caps for England, 1 international goal, but far more respect in the streets than in the boardrooms. He didn't fit the mould. He was punished for flair, for mouth, for stepping out of line. But when the fans talk, really talk, his name comes with a grin, a memory, a defiance. Off the pitch, his story was just as layered. Raised in London's East End by a working-class family, he built his life with bite and belief. After retiring, he moved to Florida, built a property business with his son, and stayed loud in punditry, unfiltered till the end. There were injuries, sackings, cancelled deals, media fallouts. He paid the price for never bowing to power. But he also gained what most players never touch, a life defined by principle. Now in his 80s, Rodney still speaks about the game as it was, not as it's been rebranded. He remembers those who made football a theatre, and he still refuses to forget the ones who made it harder than it had to be. No stats, no trophies can sum up what he meant, because Rodney Marsh left something else: memory, swagger, and a rule that still stands: memory beats medals. Always. And if you still think about the men who made a match feel different, then you know why his way of remembering matters. Subscribe if you still believe the game was defined by those who dared first.